go ahead and have Randy McGraw, our consultant.
Explain what we're presenting to the city.
And so I don't sound rude, we discussed ahead of time that if I have a question, you're okay with me asking it as we go or waiting until you get
Sure,
started?
that's fine. Thank you. So I'm Randy McGraw. I'm working with the San Antonio Police Officers Association with Tough International Insurance Services. We've got a lot of public entity clients we work with, including 3 cities based in Texas, several counties, lots of different school districts. Before I start through it's a very brief presentation on a revised proposal from the association today for the city's consideration. Before I start, just comment on the commentary Mr. Lawton just gave to. And Mr. Morris and I did meet, and we had some good discussions on the prior proposals that we had. One thing I wanted to point out on the numbers part of the chart in the July 10 presentation is represented administrative fees associated with the police part of the plan at about $2.4 to $2.3 million. And Mr. Morris and I discussed the fact that the actual cost of administrative fees that are paid to United Healthcare for administration of the plan is actually closer to about $1 million per year. So in the casual discussions, it was represented that the reason this is higher was that these might be some expenses that the city bears in administering the plan, which I think still are pretty significant. If you're paying United Healthcare $1 million a year to process claims for 2,300 employees, I'd be hard pressed to think that the city's allocated another $1 million of its own support through HR, benefit staff, etc. So that was one thing that we had a discussion on back then in terms of that. So our presentation today is brief. As you referenced, we brought 2 different proposals back to the city prior to July the 10th. They were both based on a design or a defined contribution type of concept, which was the city, like you referenced, put up $29 million to $32 million. Then the association would assume risk and responsibility to help manage the plan in terms of benefits or payroll deductions, etc. And then that's basically what Mr. Morris spent several hours discussing and going back and forth and understanding how that might work and all the underlying agreements that parties would make if you move forward with that concept. However, since then, that's fairly complex. We've got some draft language that we've traded back and forth. Today's presentation is reverting back to more of a defined benefit type of concept. So if I recall, I forget when we last got together, but I know that you'd asked to see what types of benefits or what types of rates were we proposing. So that's the format that we put things in today. It doesn't have a lot of numbers or methodology, etc. I think that's cumbersome in a session like this, but I'd be happy to answer questions in terms of what our thought process was. So basically, the group has met and has come to a consensus that we would propose offering 3 different benefit plans. And so this is slide 3, I believe, of the presentation if you have it on paper. And I'll just kind of walk you through it going across the sheet. On the far left side, we've given the current benefit plan a new name. We just call it the legacy plan. This is the plan of benefits that the police officers currently enjoy. It's the same level of benefits. It doesn't reflect any changes in deductibles. There are no really co-pays, out-of-pocket expenses, etc. There is one distinction, too, in reference to your July 10 proposal in your summary that's an omission. That would be in our line where it references, about the middle of the page, it talks about separate brand deductible or out-of-pocket cap. So in addition to the illustration that you handed out on these active benefits, which shows an out-of-pocket maximum of $600 plus a deductible of $250, there is an additional $150 out-of-pocket maximum in the current plan for individuals on drugs by themselves, $150. So the true net deductible network out-of-pocket, drug deductible out-of-pocket is really $1,000, not $850. So we just call that the legacy plan. And we've given some proposed monthly deductions. Currently, there are no deductions for the police officers association. I know that in terms of how the city prices the plan or makes it available to people that continue coverage under COVID, federal provision allows you to continue coverage if you wanted, that the rate tiers that you use are on a 3-tiered basis, which means there's a rate for single coverage if you have one dependent or if you have two or more. The rate structure that the city uses for its civilian population is based on a 4-tiered structure, which is a rate for single employees, an employee with a spouse, employee with a child or any number of children but no spouse, and employee with family, which would mean spouse and any number of children. So, on a going forward basis, considering payroll deductions being a requirement of some of the plans that are offered, we would propose going to a 4-tiered structure, which is what we use for the rest of your population. And you can see the proposed deductions that start off in the first year for each one of those 4-tier categories. We came up with a plan in the middle. I know that you have a plan that you call for the civilian population a new value plan. So to kind of match your naming convention, we just refer to this one as a value plan for college 1. So in this one, it's a traditional PPO plan design. It would have a 5, and I'll just talk about the in-network level of benefits, because that's where 97–98% of all your utilization falls. It would propose to have a $500 deductible per individual, $1,000 per family. Once service is not subject to the deductible, not subject to co-pays, would be reimbursed at 80% by the plan, or the member cost share would be 20%. And then would have a $2,000 out-of-pocket maximum for individual, or 2 times the deductible out-of-pocket maximum for family, so 2,000 to 4,000. Proposed co-pays for primary and specialty care, $25 for primary care, $35 for specialty care. Emergency room co-pay, this was a topic discussed not only at the task force that convened earlier in the year, but in some of the discussions between the parties and observations on utilization of emergency room, etc. We recognize that and understand the logic behind it, and propose having a separate $150 copay before you receive a benefit through the emergency room. And then following that copay, you're subject to your deductible and co-insurance. I think even in your own plan designs that you laid out in July, your plans don't currently have an additional copay for the emergency. So, we want to make sure we're demonstrating that we're looking at things, we're interested in controlling costs for the association, for the city. We understand everything goes into the compensation. Also, $75 urgent care copay structure. Even in the plans that you have on your civilians, you're using a $50 copay. So I just want to point out, we're not being unreasonable. We try to set things to incentivize behavior for people to seek care in a good setting. For prescription drug coverage, we have a $100 brand name drug deductible. So meaning that beneficiaries would have to meet a separate $100 deductible before they can enjoy the benefit of a copay for any brand drugs. But the deductible would not apply to your generic drugs. The copay structure would be $10 for generic, $25 for preferred brand, $40 for non-preferred brand drugs, or if you want to get a 90-day supply or through the mail order, you pay 2 copays for a 90-day supply. Those first copays are traditionally described as retail or 30-day supply. So that would be the proposed plan of benefits under the value plan. So it's similar to your new value plan, it has some differences in the plus and minus. The concept behind the proposal and thought process from the association is not too dissimilar from your July offer, where you're showing that there's a plan that there's no cost to the employee. So they think that's important, that this, you might call this, this will probably be the plan that would attract the most participation out of the three. The concept is that there's a benefit plan that offers access to good quality benefits at no cost to the employee. And then there are some lower payroll deduction amounts for the spouse, child, and family category. These are all monthly ones. And then there's a third plan, a consumer-driven health plan, which would be similar in concept to your CDHP plan as you got it labeled, with some differences. And that would be, this was really simple to describe. It would have a $3,000 individual deductible, which is higher than the deductible of the consumer-driven plan offered in the civilians. It would have a $6,000 family deductible. These would be embedded deductibles, meaning only one person has, or any one person is subject to the deductible in order to get a benefit. Under your current plan design, even though you have a $1,250 deductible, it's scheduled to go to $1,300 in 2015 because you've got that level set below the minimum family deductible. No one person under your consumer-driven health plan can receive a benefit until either as an individual they can receive it, but if they're in family coverage, they can't get a benefit until they meet next year's minimum deductible on family, which is $2,600. So ours has a higher deductible. Once you satisfy the deductible, there would be 100% benefit after that. There would be the additional 80-20 split like the current consumer-driven health plan city offers its civilian employees. We would propose under that plan that preventive drugs, which is a misnomer, but the IRS allows for the plan to remain qualified for a health savings account and still allow coverage for certain preventive drugs, which they don't have a defined list. But the concept there is that there are certain drugs that people take for chronic illnesses that you want to make sure they have access to, not subject to the entire deductible. So we would propose using the preventive care or preventive drug concept, using the same copay structure only for those drugs not subject to the deductible. And then the way we look at this too, though, is if we're using the legacy plan as a benchmark, which even your current proposal does, but that's what you're faced with right now, that the value of the contributions from the city that drive the value plan are more than enough to continue to provide coverage to 100% paid for employees and dependents, even under the consumer-driven plan. And then propose under this plan that participants in the plan as employee only, no distinction between employee only or employee family, would have a city contribution to health saving account of $1,000 per year prorated monthly. So that's the description of the benefits. I'll pause in case you have any questions.
Yeah, let me ask you a few things before you leave this slide. What would be, if this was adopted, what do you estimate the total cost to the city be?
My brain is over there on the computer. I would estimate that, I think it's right around 20, depends, our concept that drives the numbers is different than what you use on your civilian population. In your civilian population, you've got 3 plans currently with 4 payroll deduction slots that differ based on when you're hired. So potentially 24 different contribution levels from the city toward the plan. Our concept behind the scenes is that there's a benchmark cost that the city contributes, regardless of where you're hired, to each of the 4 categories, but that's the same dollar value no matter which plan you choose.
I'm just asking,
So,
this was adopted in the first 12-month year that it was in play. What would be the total cost to the city?
if you're talking contributions to the plan, that would probably be close to $29 million.
Right?
If you're talking the cost of the plan, that's going to be a function of who and which.
Say that again.
If you're talking about actual cost, going back to your sheet of the claim cost, that would be a function of which plan people enroll in. Our thoughts are the more people that gravitate toward the consumer-driven health plan, that the actual cost of the city would be even lower.
But to come up with a number, you're going to have to make certain migration assumptions, correct?
Correct.
In your $29 million number, what are your assumptions on migration from legacy to the other plans?
Well, so the $29 million number is driven by contributions from the city. And since they're the same no matter which plan you pick, that's why I was distinguishing between costs, because there's the actual cost and then there's what you put in. So if, my methodology is to make the revenues or the contributions equal to the cost. If that's a fair assumption, then because under either plan that you pick, the city is going to contribute the same amount, then it doesn't matter which one they get into, because in terms of money that you're going to budget or put in, it's the same no matter what their election is. The more people that join the legacy plan, the more revenues come in from payroll deductions to offset the higher cost of claims because of the plan design.
Well, I guess I'm
The more people that take the consumer-driven plan, the lower the claims cost. And actually, we figure that one would probably, if everybody enrolled in the consumer-driven health plan, it should fall even below the 29.
No, I understand that. And are you proposing a cap on the city's contribution at 29?
The proposal from today would say we establish the payroll deduction amounts, the account plans on payroll deduction amounts. And this is illustrated over a 5-year term, assuming that's the length of the term that the payroll deduction amounts would increase up to a factor of 7%.
No, I get that. You're not answering my question, though.
Okay.
As I read your plan, you would set these premium amounts for the employees. They would be subject to an increase of not more than 7% per year. So the employees' contributions would have a 7% cap per year.
Correct.
Is there a set amount for the city's contribution?
No, so like I said at the beginning, this is based on a defined benefit
Right.
concept as opposed to a
All right,
defined
so there's no
concept.
limit on what the city would contribute.
Or safe.
All right? But we still need an estimate of what it's going to cost the city the first year. Is that your 29 million?
True, and so the reason I didn't get bogged down in the numbers is the last time that we presented a lot of numbers, there were a lot of challenges or questions, et cetera.
I'm just asking for one number.
Pardon?
I'm just asking for one number.
29 then?
29 million. All
That's the
right.
estimate of revenue.
And if it turns out not to be 29 million, then the city pays the difference.
Correct.
All right,
If
now,
it's better than they would pocket the difference.
to get to the 29 million, you need to have sort of migration assumptions. How many people do you have, or what percentage do you have moving into the value plan or the consumer-driven plan?
So again, this would be the part where you have to see the numbers.
Well, I'm just asking what's in your 29 million.
It doesn't matter because the contribution from the city is the same. The difference in the cost of the plan is borne by the changes in the payroll reductions based on the plan pay.
As long as it stays within 7%.
Yes. We're assuming a 7% average inflation.
Do you know,
And the 29 million or figure is based on if everybody that's participating in the plan now were to enroll at the same coverage level, employee, child, spouse,
I get that,
family,
yeah, I get that.
regardless of which plan that they pick.
I get that.
Now, as you introduce benefits, and I'm sure the city agrees, like the task force talked about, or Mr. Morris knows, that when especially in the category of spousal coverage, there could be spouses that have jobs or access to health care elsewhere because they're participating, because the plan is at no cost right now, it makes sense for people to enroll. When you introduce a plan that has higher deductibles or costs and payroll deductions, then that could cause people to make changes and people to drop out of the plan, in which case the cost of the city would go down.
a couple more questions. The city civilian plan has currently, for a recent hire employee, they pay 30% of the cost. You've got the city, with these premium levels, how is the split?
Well, it depends which plan you pick, but if you lose the one in the middle as the benchmark, which was our thought process, it's close to 80-20. It's probably, depending on how you score it or what assumptions you plug in, it could range anywhere from 83-17 to 80-20 is what our estimate is.
And how about the legacy?
Pardon me?
How about the legacy?
I'd have to look at the spreadsheet for
Uh,
that.
Cadillac tax kicks in 2018. Our calculations show that there could be during the next several years, starting with 2018, up to $71 million tax liability for the current plan. Do you think that if this plan that you're presenting today was adopted, would there be a Cadillac tax on the legacy plan?
It's going to be a function of what happens over time. If you're using the 7% inflation as an average cost, then it shouldn't be an issue by 2018. If you get up, if you have higher, and it's going to be, I mean, whatever the costs are going to drive the cost of that plan. And so, and I figured that that would be a topic to address as well. And, you know, part of the concept behind the legacy plan is that basically you've got your negotiations, and then you have your membership needs to vote on things, and people are accustomed to that plan. I think that as we progress through the dialogue and discussion, if there's an issue or concern over the Cadillac tax, that the association would be willing to agree to some mechanism or trigger point where it appears that that's going to happen, that you make changes to the plan, eliminate the plan, but you do something to avoid the Cadillac tax. It's possible that the rules and the thresholds and the penalties of the Cadillac tax could change by 2018 also. Recognizing that's a concern, I think that'd be something they can forward to.
One more question. The city's civilian plan currently has employees for employee-only coverage paid and except in the consumer-driven health care plan. You've got no charge under the value plan for employee-only. Did you consider whether that would discourage migration into the consumer-driven health plan by, for example, a younger employee who's out there?
Well, actually, we think that, well, first of all, if everyone were to join the consumer-driven health plan, the way we look at it, that actually creates a windfall for the city. And that the savings, the reduced claims costs would be more than enough to fund the health saving account at the $1,000 per year threshold. And part of the concept and a lot of discussions been had by the group, we've had some really good meetings, but the concept of the consumer-driven health plan with the contribution from the city should actually attract lower risk participants in the plan, because they're the ones that really have the most to gain over time if they participate in the plan, accept money from the cities and delegate some of their own money to that plan. Then they've got enough time between now and age 65, for example, to accumulate money in that fund, which part of the purpose of that plan and concept is to create a tax-preferred savings vehicle to help offset your own expenses due to the higher deductible. And the other part is to help fund or create a fund that you can use to offset your post-retirement health care expenses. So if you're 55 and an individual next year's cap is $33,50, you can only get $30,000 into the plan in the next 10 years. But if you're 20, you can get a lot more money into that plan, and we would hope that would be attractive to a lot of the population.
If your 29 million number is correct, it seems to me the cost to the city per employee would be in the $13,000 to $14,000 range.
I would say that number is about 13.5, 13 somewhere at the end of mid-13.
Okay, that's all I have on this line.
So, benchmark for your department, this is my last slide. We think that that's about equal to over a 5-year term with 7% inflation about.
Okay, when you come up with these savings, what are you using as the starting point?
Pretty much your estimated figures. We figure that if you do nothing, you left off in 2014 at $35 million estimated cost with an extra $1 million in administrative fees. And we figure that number is probably right about $37 million for 2015.
Okay, so you're using the projected 2015 number, backing it down, I guess, to the 29 million number?
Correct.
Okay, and then you're just taking a linear multiplication.
Right.
Okay, I got it.
So there's a little bit of compounding of out-of-pocket expense and 7%, up to a 7% increase in deductions.
All right.
We figured in the first year it's roughly 6.2 million. So 6.2 6.2 times 5 with a little bit of inflation, it's where the $35 million estimate comes from.
If you want us to go ahead and go through the rest of it.
Yeah, I think we go through the rest of it, then we'll caucus and talk amongst ourselves.
Okay. Jason?
All right. So what we've done here is we've met as a team, and our goal was that during the transition, the lowest paid of us, of all of us, would stay whole through the transition. That's where we've come up with the raises per year. The first raise, if this thing takes off like a rocket ship and we're done by Christmas, that's where we're getting our numbers from for the first year savings. Which you'll see here, the estimated cost of 4% raise. It starts in January, the second quarter. Your new payroll will be $4.6 million. Your pension contributions at 24.64% is $1.3 million. Pre-funded health, about $400,000, total $6.2 million. Comes up to a net cost of $0. And then there were some questions about whether or not the general fund expenditures were going to change as a ratio of total expenditures. No, the 66.5% of general fund expenditure stays the same. I've got some slides further down to explain our point of view on that. And then it goes in and talks about the amendments that were made to the proposed budget this year. On September the 18th, there was an increase in revenue of $1.8 million and a decrease of expenditures of $118,000. If that holds true, which it did to the budget adoption, then the actual percentage of public safety as a percentage of general fund revenue will drop a tenth of a point.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
On this slide, when you come up with your, as I understand it, this is a 4% raise for 3/4 of the year.
Yes.
And you come up with $6.2 million as the cost of that.
Yes.
Our number is actually different, and I wanted to ask you how you came up with it. We calculate a 1% wage increase for the police as costing $2.6 million, and that is taking the base wages, the overtime, longevity, the things that get affected when you give a raise, and we come up with 2.6, which if you took that for a full year would be 10.6, and then for 3/4 of a year it would be 7.95. How do you come up with your
Okay,
base?
so what I did to discover the UK is I took the payroll snapshot we got from October of last year. That's the most recent data I have, which puts us at a population of 2308. Put them in their rank structure as they were based on longevity and where they had promoted through the ranks. Once you figure that out, you figure out there's 67 probationaries, 2 assistant chiefs, 6 deputy chiefs, those kinds of things. Once I had that, I took the payroll as it is today, which is in our contract under the attachments. There's a pay scale in the back there, and you can see what each individual rate makes. When you multiply the number of belly buttons that are on the payroll snapshot times their pay based on the contract wages of today, and you add in that 3/4 of 4%, that's where you come up with the difference of $4.6 million.
We'll talk about that later. I don't want to get bogged down in that.
Okay.
When you're talking, you're basically saying that the wage proposal wipes out any savings that you're presenting on the healthcare.
The 4% wage payroll increase, base pay increase, keeps the lowest member, the probationary officer, there's 22 of them right now, whole if they go into the new value plan.
Okay, but for purposes of the city trying to save money, any savings from your health proposal are nullified by the wage proposal.
Yes, if you wanted to save money, it would be at the detriment of the lowest paid employees first.
And in fact, if you go to the prior slide, I get your, we can argue about the numbers or agree later on the numbers, but for fiscal year, no, go to 7.
So, there you go.
4% is either going to cost 6.2 or 7.95, depending on which of us is right on that.
Okay.
But you don't take into account compounding, do you? In essence, if you go to fiscal year 2016, the city will be paying the 4% that it paid in 15, and it will be paying the 3.5% that it's paying in 16. So it's 7.5 higher than it would have been paying in 14.
If there had been 0 wage raises, then yes, there would be 7.5% higher.
And so the actual
the
cost over a multi-year period of the union's proposal not only doesn't save the city money, it costs the city money.
Well, when you're saying 2.6 million is 1% of the payroll, not 1% of base pay. And inside of payroll,
Just
you've got.
use your numbers, though. If you just use your
Okay,
numbers.
if we use my numbers, then you're gonna net $8 million after 5 years. You're gonna come out ahead $8 million, even while keeping the lowest among the
But that's not considering compounding.
That is considering compound.
Okay, we'll talk about that later. When you looked at the general fund, you talked about this 1.8 million. You understand that's allocated. That's not just out there to be spent on anything.
Yes, sir. Talking about right there.
Did you ever, the budget for fiscal year 2015 has in it a $10,000 per employee healthcare cost, which results in a savings over the 3/4 of the year that it would be in place of $14 million for fire and police. 8.5 of that is police. You never backed that out, did you?
I wasn't involved in the budgetary
I know.
process, and
So
I
you-
can't talk about the budget.
You took that budget, which had that 14
I
million
took
savings,
401 million, yes, sir.
but it has the 14 million savings, which if the union's proposal is adopted, not only would we have the increased cost, but we'd have to back out that $14 million. All
I can't answer for your budgetary process.
right, thank you.
So this is where the initial start off about the proposal, where we're at today, the initial budget, the percentage of expenditures over the general fund revenue. The top one is right now, and the adopted proposals, what would happen after the adopted budgets occurred. And basically, the lowering numbers of the fire and police is showing based off of increased revenue. This is directly from fiscal year proposed budget. And of course, the revenues have increased and the allocations have decreased, but there wasn't anything in the handouts from the council session to explain where that $108,000 in savings was. This is page 106 of the same document, and it shows the total revenues and total appropriations, and there's the public safety numbers. If anybody's wondering where we're getting our numbers from, that's where they're coming from. This is the budget adoption handout that the city made public on the 18th of September and was approved. And then this goes into the math as far as what our numbers are over the revenues. We can go down the road if you want to, or we can pretty much end it there however you want to go. This is basically just showing you that this is today, before the transition, what the proposed budget was 2 weeks ago. Total expenditures over total revenues, 38.9%. This is after the transition with the adopted budget. The total budget for the police shouldn't be impacted unless, apparently there's something else going on back there. 38.8%, and that's due to the increase in revenues. This is as a percentage of expenditures before the adoption of the budget and before transition of the plan. And there's virtually no change because there's only lower percentage of expenditures on the general fund account. And again, this is public safety, including police, fire, and burn police, as a percentage of total revenues before and after transition and adoption of budget. And you'll see the 66.9% goes down to 66.8 because of the increased revenue. And again, public safety is a percentage of appropriations, 66.5%, which is the number that's been going around in the media. And there's virtually no change because of the changes in the allocation. That is it.
Well, I've got some concerns which we gather from my questions, but I think this is a good presentation that Jason and Randy, thanks for the work. We're pleased that we have a premium proposal and a benefit proposal. I'd like to take about a half hour